Good morning, everybody. My name's Geoff Leslie. Oops, that shouldn't have gone there. Go back. What have I done? No, that's not right. There it is. My name's Geoff Leslie. I don't know all of you. I've been living in Warragul for just over a year, and before that I lived in Yea for 10 years, and before that I lived in Barham on the Murray River for 20 years, and I was born in Melbourne. I've been a Baptist minister for many years, but I'm now very gladly retired. And today I want to talk about Psalm 104. And I thought before I speak about it, we should hear it read. So I've asked a few different people to help me read. My daughter Emma, my wife, and Judy. So if you'd like to come out and stand up here at the pulpit, please. And we'll read Psalm 104. It's the most amazing psalm about nature. And I think you're first, Emma.
Psalm 104. Praise the Lord, O my soul. O Lord my God, you are magnificent. You are robed in splendour and majesty. You cover yourself with light as if it were a garment. You stretch out the skies like a tent curtain and lay the beams of the upper rooms of your palace on the rain clouds. You make the clouds your chariot and travel along the wings of the wind. You make the winds your messengers and the flaming fire your attendant. You establish the earth on its foundations. It will never be upended. The watery deep covered it like a garment. The waters reached above the mountains. Your shout made the waters retreat. At the sound of your thunderous voice, they hurried off. As the mountains rose up and the valleys went down, to the place you appointed for them, you set up a boundary for them that they could not cross, so that they would not cover the earth again.
You made the moon to mark the months, and the sun sets according to a regular schedule. You make it dark and night comes, during which all the beasts of the forest prowl around. The lions roar for prey, seeking their food from God. When the sun rises, they withdraw and sleep in their dens. Then people trudge out to do their work and labour away until evening. How many living things you have made, O Lord! You have exhibited great skill in making all of them. The earth is full of the living things you have made. Over here is the deep, wide sea, which teems with innumerable swimming creatures, living things both small and large. The ship travels there, and over here swims the sea monster you made to play in it.
You turn springs into streams. They flow between the mountains. They provide water for all the animals in the field. The wild donkeys quench their thirst. The birds of the sky live alongside the animals. They chirp from deep in the forest. You water the mountains from the upper rooms of your palace, and the earth is full of the fruit you cause to grow. You provide grass for the cattle and crops for people to cultivate, so they can produce food from the ground, wine to make people glad, oil to make their faces shine, and bread to strengthen their hearts. The trees of the Lord receive all the rain they need, the cedars of Lebanon, which God planted. There the birds make nests, and at the top of the fir trees, the storks build a nest. The wild goats live in the high mountains, and the rock badgers find safety in the cliffs.
All your creatures wait for you. You provide them with food at the proper time. You give food to them and they gather it up. You open your hand and they are satisfied with good things. When you turn your face away, they panic. When you take away their life's breath, they die and revert to dust. But when you send forth your life-giving spirit, they are created and you renew the surface of the ground. May the splendour of the Lord endure. May the Lord find pleasure in the living things he has made. He looks down at the earth and it shakes. He touches the mountains and they erupt. I will sing to the Lord as long as I live. I will sing praise to my God as long as I exist. May these reflections of mine be pleasing to him. I will rejoice in the Lord. May sinners vanish from the earth. May the wicked disappear. Praise the Lord, O my soul. Praise the Lord. So this psalm talks about God in ways that modern people do not. We can't do it anymore. Something's changed. The modern worldview, the current social imaginary, is so different from what it is to Aboriginal people, or what it is to medieval people, or to the ancient world, the world of biblical times. We do not see God in the landscape without a massive effort. We've been trained to look at the world in a sort of a material, a scientific kind of way. And our religion has become just a private matter of belief in a different compartment of our brains. And it's a great loss. And so a verse like this one, which I read out a moment ago, God looks at the earth and it quakes. He touches the mountains and they erupt. We wouldn't say that anymore. That's not the way we look at the world. When there's an earthquake, we say it's tectonic plates. When there's moving, and when there's a volcano, we have some explanation for that. And so in the ancient world, it wasn't like that. It's science that has made the difference. And I got nothing against science. I know some scientists that are pretty good people, Rolf. Science is a wonderful thing, but it's only one way of looking at the world. And here's the way it works. So in the ancient world, when there was a volcano, say, there were many possible causes. There, of course, was God, as God is touching the mountains and they are erupting. Or there's also the thought that it could possibly be punishment. We've all been wicked, and so God is sending this volcano to punish us. Or it could be that we've been cursed. Or it could be that, maybe the mountain is angry with us. We should go and throw our virgin daughter down the caldera, and that will satisfy it. Or it could be it's the fates, it's gods. Certainly in the Greek world, if anything like that happened, they'd say it's the gods that are against us. Or we might say it's magic. Someone's cast a spell, it's a fairy or something like that is affecting us. And so this view of the world predominated throughout all of life, in all countries of the world, until the scientific revolution, around the 1600s. And then what they did then was they said, let those other things might be true, but let's eliminate all other causes except the material cause. We'll just look at what we can find that explains how it happens and why it happens. And so they look at not at God, not at punishment, not at fate, not at curses, but at volcanology and explaining how volcanoes work. And that's a perfectly true and right way to look at the world, but it might not be all there is to it. There could be more to it. But they've eliminated those other things just for the purpose of trying to find an explanation. And it's a wonderful improvement. Before that, you leave your meat out for too long and suddenly maggots appear in it. They'd say, they've spontaneously appeared. God's created them there. But then the scientist said, well, if you look very closely, you'll see that fly laid them there. But it took a long time for people to actually observe that closely and had to eliminate all the other causes. And so the trouble with that is that then the world becomes kind of disenchanted. No longer do we look at the world and see supernatural things or spirits or God or anything else present in the world. The world suddenly becomes just a bleak and empty thing full of material things made out of atoms. We can explain everything. There's no need for any larger cause or any larger being. And so some people have used science to assert quite dogmatically that there is no other thing. But for all of us, even if we're Christians, in many cases we look at the world and it's become disenchanted. What's happened is that science has stripped the world of its sacred. The world is no longer considered to be, run by God at every level. Like in the old days, government was always seen as authorised by God, the divine right of kings. We don't have God authorising our government and society anymore. God was constantly intervening in nature. They saw God's hand changing things all the time. Now we explain it by material and natural causes. There's no longer any need to evoke pixies or fairies or spirits or ancestors or magic or witches or curses or fates or luck or chakras or auras or demons or horoscopes or traditions or dreams or hunches or punishments or mysteries or karma. All those things have been sort of eliminated from the way we look at the world now. Probably some of them, that's a very good thing. But the world has become a disenchanted place. It's left the world simply a material place. Science, which provides such important and interesting answers to many questions, has overstepped its place and stripped the world of the sacred. That's not the way Psalm 104 sees the world. Psalm 104 sees the world as brimming with God. And I just wish we could get back to that place. So Psalm 104 looks at the sun and says, God is robed in the sun, robed in splendour. It looks at the clouds and says the clouds are God's chariot. It says God rides on the clouds. It says God sends the winds as his messengers. It sends lightning as your messengers. Actually, in the text, it says sends fire as your messenger. And I was thinking, whilst we translate that to lightning because we understand that, maybe for Aboriginal people, when fire played such an important part in the landscape for them, they would see fire as God's tool that's been given to them. He says, you water the mountains from your heavenly cisterns. You feed the young lions. We know how lions hunt, but in the ancient world they said God is feeding the lions. All creatures look to you and you feed them at their proper time. And so it's a wonderful way of looking at the world. But Psalm 104 sees God in creation not just as actually doing those things, but it's a beautiful psalm because it actually explores nature in a wonderful way, and it's a rich telling of the story of God. So, for example, it sees God at work as bringing harmony. It sees all the parts of nature working together. God provides water and food, and it says at the right time. It's sort of God set up the right time and he's put things in their right place. There's a certain harmony. God's wisdom and goodness are seen everywhere. I wrote a song once that had the chorus says, the planet is alive with joyful music, clapping, roaring, singing that the whole world shines with the goodness of God and the harmony of nature. And the God they all praise is a friend of mine. It also talks about ecological appropriateness. I didn't actually see those words in the Hebrew, ecological, but I'm sure it's there somewhere. But what it says is God's planted some trees down low and some trees up high. They're different kinds of trees. God sees some creatures live in the high mountains. The goats live in the high mountains. The rock badgers live over here. Down here in the valley, we have the tall cedars and we have songbirds nesting in the lower branches. And we have storks building their nest on the top of the trees, which is exactly what they do in Europe. The storks build on top of chimneys now or top of tall trees. So he's noticing the way God is, the way nature or ecology is all set up in these systems and things find their own place. He says that at night time the lions go out and hunt, then they go to bed, and then the humans go out and work. And that's another interesting thing. Look at humans. In this psalm, humans have their place. They're just another creature. They're part of the cosmos. They're part of the ecology. Though the story is told, of course, from a human point of view. So, for example, he says in verse 15, you provide grass for the cattle and crops for the people to cultivate. So God is providing people with grains that they can grow. It's obviously an agrarian society. So they can produce food from the ground. Wine, I love this. We would never have this when I was growing up. Wine was not celebrated. Wine to make people happy. That's encouraging drug use. Oil to make their faces shine. In the Mediterranean world, you weren't healthy unless you rubbed your face with olive oil and made it shine. It was used as a medicine as well. And bread to strengthen our hearts. Wine to make us happy, oil to make us shine, and bread to make us strong. These are all gifts of God. How wonderful is that? But that's just all part of his observations of God in nature. Look what God has done. Look at the mountains, the rocks, the lions, the oil, the wine, the bread. It's so wonderful to put them all together. And then he says later on, this is a stunning little thing. Over here is the deep, wide sea, teeming with innumerable creatures, living things small and large. The ships travel there. He looks at the ships and he says, God is wonderful to give us the genius to make ships. When you see an aircraft drifting low across the sunset sky, God, you made a beautiful aeroplane there. That's what I think we need to do. God is behind all the things that are in the world, even the things made by humans. But there's also one thing where humans are mentioned, which is not so good. Before I go to that, the best thing about the psalm is he says, I will sing to God as long as I live. May these observations of mine give you pleasure. A way of worship is to be a scientist and observe what's going on in the world. And the trouble with many people, they're completely blind to the natural world. They walk around, they don't hear the birds sing, they don't notice that they're standing on ants and destroying flowers. They just poison everything, and they don't see God is everywhere. But to observe nature is an act of worship. That's what he's saying. May these observations of mine give you, God, pleasure. He doesn't just want us to sing songs on Sundays. He wants us to see God in the whole beautiful world that he has made. So observing nature equals worship. But there's one jarring note. The last verse, he suddenly throws this in, and it just, he says, let sinners vanish from the face of the earth. Let the wicked disappear forever. But I know exactly how he feels. Because you look at the beautiful, vast landscape, and then you see all the houses and the cars and the smoke, and you see all the things that people are doing that make the place seem pretty unpleasant. The problem is that humans have enormous power to change nature, and they don't always use it well. And while God is everywhere, and the whole place is alive with God's presence, science has in many ways created a sort of a break with the sense of God in creation. There's a disjunction, a separation, an incoherence. Because we look at the world without seeing its full divine harmony, we feel kind of cut off. The birds sing praise, but we don't know the tune. The delicacy and grandeur of creation is all around us, but we're locked down to our dull, self-serving world of commerce and sport and cars and roads and concrete and trucks. We begin to see the world as a thing that we can exploit for our purposes. We don't see it as God's wonderful gift to us, but we see it as something that we can mine and chop down. And we begin to become exploiters. Some people even say humans are a pest species. We wipe out ecosystems. They say we drop 8 million pieces of rubbish into the ocean every day. We have the place littered so badly. There's rubber tyres everywhere. There's concrete. We poison everything. We have guns and bombs. And Psalm 104 says, if only the wicked would leave the earth. If only people appreciated the earth and treated it well and obeyed God's will for it, it would be a much more peaceful and wonderful place. So I guess I want to say, how can I help us all to re-find God in creation? I thought restoring God to creation is actually a bit unfair. He always was there, and it always will be there. It's how we can learn to see God in creation is more the thing. What do we need to change? And the first thing I think we need to change is our attitude. We need to have an attitude of humility and awe about nature. I think when white settlement arrived here in this place, this is the thing that strikes me most about living in Warragul. I read the history books and I see that when Strzelecki came through here, it was all tall trees and tree ferns and lyrebirds. And the early settlers came and their one goal was to chop down every tree and then replant them with oaks. What arrogance we had that we thought, this place is not right. We've got to fix it. We've got to make it how we want it. They chopped down every tree. They shot everything that moved. They reshaped the land. They introduced horrible plants and animals and birds that have become ecological vandals, like, from cane toads to foxes and cats and all the plant weeds that we keep pulling out of our gardens. We need a sense of humility. We need to look at what is, what comes with nature, and try to find harmony with it. We need to learn so that the lion and the lamb can live together and not have to destroy each other. We need to make changes, but gently, carefully, thoughtfully, and slowly. The second thing is that we worship God when we pay attention to creation. Attention is a wonderful gift. One of the ways I find helps increase my attentiveness to the natural world is through poetry. And there are so many wonderful poets who try to reconnect us with a sense of wonder, with a sense of imagination and joy in creation. Even I think Tim Winton's latest novel is about rediscovering the magic in creation. Here's a poem from a writer called David White. I want to walk through life, amazed and inarticulate with thanks. I want to know when I lean down to the lilies by the water and feel their small and perfect reflection on my face. I want to know what I am and what I am involved with by loving this world as I do. I want to be found by love. I want to come alive in the holiness of belonging. See how the poet just opens your eyes to look at things differently. Poetry is a wonderful gift. But there's also other ways you can do it. When I was, over the years, I've tried many ways to help people become alive to nature. And one thing I produced was a forest worship sheet. I'd send people out into the forest for 1 hour and I'd give them this sheet and it said, try and find something grand that speaks to you of the majesty of God. Try and find something small that speaks to you of the wisdom of God. Find something that is a symbol or speaks to you of the sacred in life. Find the pace of the forest. Are you in tune with that pace? And so all these questions like that. And I'd send people away to wander through the red gum forest around Barham or around the Yea wetlands where I lived previously. Actually, I went there yesterday. Yesterday we had a breakfast with the birds and we had tours through the wetlands looking for birds after a breakfast together. It was terrific. But with this worship sheet, people would come back, they'd say, that was wonderful. We just really feel we connected with God. I said, which questions did you find easiest? They said, actually, we didn't use the questions. We just read them and that sort of opened our eyes to look at the world differently. And we just made up our own thoughts and questions as we went through life, went through the forest. That's great. That's what I want. People to look at the forest and feel alive in it, feel belonging to it, instead of feeling cut off from it and distant from it. Our prayer and praise, needs to be creation focused. And so many of the songs we've had today have been wonderful songs that have talked about God's indescribable creation. But sometimes most of our songs have a picture of God sitting on a throne in some lofty place, and his graciousness allows us to approach and be loved. Instead of seeing God creating from a lofty distant place in the heavens, Psalm 104 describes God's spirit immanent in the earth and all creatures. Did you get that phrase where it talks about God turns his face away from people? Here it is. All your creatures wait for you, you feed them, but sometimes you turn your face away and they die. They panic, it says. You take away their life's breath, they die and revert to dust. And there's a sense that when the drought comes, I've seen terrible droughts at Barham, these massive red gum forests, 1/3 of them died during the great drought of the millennium drought of 2006 to 2009. All the leaves fell off the healthy ones and most of them grew back, but many of them didn't. And the place became